No, but that actually ties into a question that I was thinking about, which is, as a student still, I assume, are there opportunities for this to be folded into the curriculum at your school? Have you worked with your teachers on? Because I think what you're doing is great, and I think, looking ahead to your college and university education, and this is something I was terrible at in high school, there's more room for self-determination than I think sometimes people realize. And I think you're really well positioned if you find the right teacher. Has there been any of that? Have you been working with your teachers or your school at all?
Well, I homeschool, so.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Sorry. But self-determination, then you get that. That's a good.
I can definitely tell it's greatly helped me with my algebra skills, for one thing. I mean, because most of it is basically just algebra.
Best way to learn algebra coded.
So yeah, you've had what do you call it? Practical, real-world experience at these abstract theoretical concepts.
Mm-hmm.
You did it backwards, but that is cool. That is. I bet. I'm sorry, I talked over you, but I bet that you did things, and then you did the learning. You were like, oh, we're in this lesson algebra. You're like, oh yeah, I recognize why I would want to do that.
And that is hugely important though, because I can remember having to memorize. Let's just call it what it is. Memorize formulas in algebra and in geometry that I had no context as to why those were important or how they how they fit together. I mean, even today, there's times when I'm going, oh, that's why I needed to take that trig class, because not every object, getting the curve or getting the surface of something is not always that straightforward, And but at the time, I had no real reference as to why it was important.
And yeah, the thing that it's probably I was most pre-taught from my programming with was vectors and graphing and all that. I mean, I just whizzed through all that in my math because it was just, oh yeah, I've done this a million times with all of my particles that I have to move around.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. So okay, so you're amazing. I'm sick of hearing it. I won't say it ever again. Yeah, in 2 minutes I will. But so you already said that CBEffects is at 3 point something. I can't remember the number, but it feels like pretty much it's rounded out. Sorry, it's not going to be going much further unless you get like a, hey, I really need this, or somebody comes to you with a question. So what's your next major project?
You mean like library or personal thing or whatever?
You got anything you're working on? You want to give us a little sneak peek, or we hear you?
Hey, I hear someone playing. Whatchamacallit?
Sorry, yeah, that's actually me. I downloaded. Sorry, I didn't do it in advance, but I downloaded Crystalline, and
wow.
I guess my phone is. I thought I had muted it, but it's Bluetoothed with my car stereo. So.
Well, I've heard those sound effects millions of times, having to play the whole thing. So the second it happens, whoop, I know what that is. Anyway, so I forget what we were talking about.
You got any major plans? Any new projects you want to reveal? You thinking about doing anything new and interesting?
Well, I'm mostly working on personal things that aren't really at a, like, I can't show it to you because it's not quite at a level where it's showable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and of course Dusk I'm still working on. I still have big plans for it. And yeah.
Okay, so yes, but not going, no reveal.
Yeah.
So you've been with Corona now, using Corona for about 3 years. Do you think you're going to continue using Corona, or have you considered? Now, I'm not saying leave, and I'm not saying you should leave, but I think what it sounds like to me is you've gotten to a point where you might actually start thinking about 3D stuff, like that'd be the next branch out for you. Have you considered doing any other game development?
Yes, I definitely have. I've looked at a lot of other options, and right now I think Corona is right now the best for me. I mean, because I've I was once trying to make my own game engine, and it got to a pretty nice point in C++. But then I realized that, this is all already done. And as much as I love to publish a game with something I already have, I mean, Corona gives you cross-platform and the best language in the world to code in, and all that. So, I mean, and then I looked at others, the leading 3D one, which Unity, it was a little convoluted, and I hated the languages that went with it.
Did you say Unity?
Hmm?
Unity?
Yes.
Ah.
I looked at Unity, and I mean, it can do its 2D stuff if it wants to, but somehow I don't. It's a 3D engine. I mean, I can stay with Corona if I want to do 2D. If I ever want to get into 3D, you probably use it and get over my hate of the three languages that it uses. But
that's interesting that you say that, because that I've gone back and forth evaluating Unity. In the early days, I evaluated it as a development platform, and then of course they came out with different versions and different features and stuff like that, and it always kind of draws you back to see what they're doing. And they're as you said, the languages are sort of convoluted. There's multiple ways to do things, and they're not necessarily friendly languages. You need a little bit of experience before you jump in, and then it seems like because it's rooted in 3D, even though when they added the 2D stuff, it seemed like the interface, all the visual interfaces, all the switches and all that, and the knobs that you had to turn and all that stuff like that was still so very well overwhelming. Is that what?
3D capabilities of it are moving around a plane in 3D that's just viewed as 2D. I mean, you have a 2D tool for that. You can, I guess, if you really love Unity as a product, you could use that, but it just seemed so backwards to me. I mean, Unity can stay in its zone, Corona can stay in its zone, and they're just different,
Yeah. It does seem like the people who are in the Unity community who would want to maybe do a 2D game, who are already familiar with the controls and stuff, would be fine for them. But someone starting out, it seems like it would definitely be an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking for myself too, coming from Corona was my entry point into app development as well. My dipping my toes into Unity, its IDE is heavy on the eye. It's really integrated. You've really got to buy into that. And I think if you're into that, that's great. But I'm sure Charles can relate to this, because I know you're a Photoshop user going way back. It's like when a new version of Adobe Creative Suite comes out, and you're like, God, I've spent 2 years figuring out this, and now you're moving everything on me. For me, with Corona, I love the simplicity of just give me a text editor. Give me a text editor and give me the simulator, and that's all I need.
Yeah.
And when I dipped my toes into Unity, I was like, oh God, I have to figure out where I've got Windows and Windows and Windows, and it was very off-putting to me personally, although some people may love it.
Yeah, and that's definitely my preference. I like to actually write the code as much as possible. I mean, I love Apple products and iOS and all that, but using Xcode and having to go through Interface Builder for everything, I like to write X equals a new window, not plus add new window, drag it to where you like it. I mean, that's just how I work. And Unity, you can either use the visual editor or kind of be on your own. So.
Yeah, that abstraction in Xcode was definitely it definitely was a brain teaser for me, because a long time ago, seems like a million years ago, I worked with Visual Studio to do mobile apps back when Pocket PC was popular. And in that case, you dragged elements onto the screen, and then you could set properties for them, and then you would double click that thing, and then it would open up, and you would have what they called a code behind, and you would map basically code to that UI element. But then in Xcode, it's kind of like a hybrid where you drag things onto the screen and then you write some code and then you have to drag and associate those two things together. And for me, that was like, it was made one of my eyes twitch. I was like, I really don't get it. So it took a while to kind of get that. But with Corona, it just seemed, or Lua, it just seems like you get to write the code.